Welcome to the Got Trauma Podcast with your hosts, Courtney K. and Monica Newland.
Hello, hello, hello. We are back.
Good morning. And
Good
it's actually morning.
It is morning this time. Look at us. Look at us.
Amazing.
We wanted to give a shout out to everybody who has been participating in our community group because it has been such a lovely group of people sharing some insight and connecting and introducing themselves. And I've just found it so lovely to see everybody kind of come together. I'm glad that we were able to provide a space that people are enjoying and feeling comfortable starting to talk. And it is a private group, but it is open to anybody. We just have to make sure that they're approved. But it is lovely to see so much participation and warmth and love. And so thanks everybody for participating.
So there's about building the community, everybody helping each other and supporting and being loving. Which is
that's good. That's all. We want to put as much love in the world as we can, right?
Yes.
And this is especially when you feel like you haven't had much in your life. So band together as a community, I guess it's kind of nice.
It's nice to have the consistency, right? Because that's my biggest thing for me. A lot of it was the inconsistency. I think that really has affected me over the course of my life. That part of things is not having that something to rely on when it comes to stability and dealing with these particular things in life, all these hurdles and not hurdles and things,
The group isn't just for people. We speak obviously about our trauma wounds or whatever you want to call them, but it's for anybody from any sort of background, circumstances or whatever. It doesn't have to be like parental wounds or something, but
it's not specific.
Yeah, just people who have gone through some shit and are looking for a safe environment to be able to talk a little bit and find some support. So thanks everybody for that.
Yes.
We did have something else planned for today, but we decided to change it up a little bit because if you're following along, you know that Courtney posted a video, a very raw and personal video. And so we were going to talk a little bit about Courtney, like what you were referencing in that personal video. I know you spoke a little bit about having some memories that popped up, has continuously, I guess, popped up over the years that you weren't really sure about, didn't really quite understand it. And I thought maybe we could talk a bit about what that's been like for you and how you sort of put the pieces together and acknowledge that memory and what that was all about so people have a little bit more context.
Yes. So I was actually having a conversation with a very dear friend of mine, and we were talking about just things that had happened in childhood. And the way that they described a memory to me, it triggered something very deep inside me. And always having had this memory come up, more vividly as a child. And as, you kind of grow up, you just sort of, it gets put on a shelf and you walk by it every so often and you look at it and you're kind of like, I don't know if you're a memory, whether you were a figment, something. I mean, but the fact of the matter is it's still on that shelf and it's still there all the time. So you would think if it was a dream, it would have dissipated. And then I started to do a little bit of research into dreams and memories and like the difference between, and also whether you fabricated something right in your head, because a lot of the time, I mean, especially with this particular memory, because it is very, it's really awful in nature. So I'm thinking like, did I make this up? Is it, and obviously your brain is going to want to go there because it's not something you want to actually acknowledge it being a real memory. So I finally took it off the shelf because of that click. It finally downloaded to the file it was supposed to go to, which was the memory file. And I was like, oh, fuck. Okay. So just for validation, I am going to do a little bit of digging. I'm going to contact a family member And just ask if, some of these things, like just to validate, for instance, if a certain person existed or not, if that makes sense. Because I didn't know if I had made this person up. And sure enough, it was validated that yes, that person did exist. And yes, the memory I have is, it does correlate. So that was okay. There's the validation that this was real.
And how did that feel? Because you must have.
At first, honest, just to not feel like I was crazy.
Yeah.
And just to have a place for this particular thing to go, that now I can move through it.
Right.
I mean, it's been there for so many years, and it is, as awful as it is, I can now move through it.
Right.
I can now say, okay, you did exist. I can feel the feelings of that and move through that and not carry it anymore as being this thing that's clearly triggered a lot of things in my life that I was completely unaware of. I had a very, it was just like click, 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 this really strange fear of men I had my whole life. Didn't really know where that came from. So that was like, okay, well, that makes sense now. So just all these things. And, talking with that family member, kind of unearthing some other really uncomfortable and, quite frankly, things that I was so unaware of. And the biggest thing for me, because I talked to two different family members on two different sides, one on maternal, one on paternal. So, and these were two very important people at one point in my life. And I was led to believe they were very important people. I was told, these are important people and we love them and blah, 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 and put them on a pedestal. These were not people that should have been put on a pedestal.
Yeah.
These are people that did some really awful, awful fucking things to people.
Yeah.
And got away with it because nobody felt safe to speak up.
Yeah.
Because they knew they wouldn't be believed.
Right.
Or if they were believed, maybe they would be ostracized.
Right. Yeah.
If anything, I was enraged at this.
I was going to say, because
things
I would be fucking mad because
it is.
And I know, like, in
in
speaking with you over this time, like, you were like blown away and then you kind of got pissed because you're like, wait a second, like, you're putting these pieces together and you're questioning things and you're getting, responses that you were kind of hoping weren't going to be true. And it pisses you off because you're like, how is this possible? Right. Like, how can people be like this?
Well, exactly. How can people be like this? And just the whole thing about people that have been afflicted by these awful situations and these people that have to carry this stuff around inside of them because, either way, if they let it out at a certain time, they know no one's going to believe them or they know they're not going to be heard. So just in order to keep the peace and to keep this family integrity, nobody says anything. Right. I'm also, there's another very personal situation that I'm dealing with it with the same sort of
context,
the same sort of stuff behind, same sort of context behind it. And it's just, it blows you away that it is, we're coming out of that more so than we ever were for sure. But that there is this stigma to keep everything inside and not say anything because if you do, it's
keep
not
the
safe.
peace.
It's not safe. That's so fucking wrong. Why? How horrible is it?
You're like, well, the situation's not safe. Yeah.
Be put in a situation of not being safe, and then you can't even come out of that situation to be safe because that's also not safe.
Yeah.
It's such a mind fuck to me. Yeah. And I feel like it has really affected, generations before us and our generation especially, with the secret keeping of other people's secrets from, times ago. And it's so fucking wrong.
It's true because generations, previous generations to us, were definitely, there was, keep the peace, we keep the family dynamic. We stay, bound as a family. And despite like the craziness that might be going on, people really weren't, very open about that sort of thing. And I think we have seen a shift in recent years and, last couple of decades, even towards, we're making steps towards that as people have decided to come out with, personal information about themselves. And unfortunately it puts a bad light on family members and families. But at the same time, it's like, wait a second, I can't just sit in this fear and discomfort and abuse because I'm trying to protect the abuser,
Yep.
right? And that tends to happen. And people, like you said, don't acknowledge it, don't want to acknowledge it. They are afraid to acknowledge it. They're afraid of the abuser themselves. Like this is a very common theme that happens with families. It's terrible.
Well, and you're seeing it a lot now too, where people are coming out later in life.
Yeah.
Much later in life, when they've gotten to that point where they have established their own families or their own identity, and they're saying, okay, I don't have to hold this anymore. I don't give a fuck what happens to you.
Yeah.
And, the biggest salute to that kind of bravery, because that is, it gets even harder as time has gone on, because, people love to go right to, well, why wouldn't you have said something sooner? Why is all of a sudden this affecting your life? How, and also it kind of, it's hard for the people that come out, because it's people, instead of being supportive, are almost instilling this next sense of self-doubt.
Yeah.
The next level of it that you probably already had at one point, because it's easier to just, did it happen? Maybe it didn't happen. It's better if it just didn't happen and I just keep going through it.
Yeah, just ignore it. Yeah.
But I mean, emotions, like anything, they have to be digested. And if you have something that hasn't been digested, that's just sitting there, it eventually will fester, right? It eventually will become something
Totally
much,
agree.
much worse later on. So it's definitely where I see my advocacy going.
Yeah.
I was on it. I'm still a little blown away by it, just because you shake your head at how many people just didn't want to acknowledge something that was so obviously right in front of their faces.
Right.
That's the part. And, and my heart goes out to the people that were affected by these people, because it's just, like, that's one person. How many other people were there? It's usually not isolated to one person, one incident. It's very seldom you see that. So it's, excuse me, I'm just very opened a can of worms.
Yeah.
And now I just want to kind of work through that, figure out, like, what do you do? What are the next steps in that? Because obviously, these people are passed away now. So it's not,
so what are the next steps? Like, I mean, you could, try to find out as much information as possible. You could, like, get in touch with other people who you believe may have been affected in the same way.
That's kind of my next. Those are kind of my next. I'm going to very delicately sleuth.
Yeah.
Because it is a very delicate subject, and you do have to tread very, very lightly on it. It's not one of those things that you can, kind of walk into balls to the wall, full steam ahead, because there are so many intricate parts of it, and there are
and
people
because
that,
lots of people who are, like, potentially affected, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And also, and this is the other thing too, it isn't my choice to make other people
Acknowledge it.
Exactly. That's not my choice to do. So there are probably people that aren't ready for that. And that's not my place to make them ready for that.
Yeah.
All I can do is lay the groundwork and make it as safe as possible, that if there were a place in time where somebody felt like they could come out, they have a safe place to go with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Versus trying to pull people out of a place that they're just not ready to be.
Yeah. Because people
So
are at different, places in their healing journey.
yeah, exactly.
Some people may never want to go there
Yep.
and acknowledge it, right?
Yep.
And I know one of the things that you said to me when you told me you had this sort of realization and made those connections is that it's you talked about putting the memory on a shelf and leaving it there for a while. Like you did that for really your whole life until recently. And I think part of the podcast and part of where we are in life is we're moving through things like you said, and we're healing from things, and we're trying to recover from some things, and we've been able to process and deal with things that have potentially causes damage growing up, mental health issues growing up, and we've dealt with that to a certain degree, and certainly you have. And when you make that space for it, like you mentioned, making the space, like I think I have enough space where I'm able to comprehend
Yep.
this situation that has happened to me. I'm able to process it. I'm able to like receive, like, okay, this is something like that you need to deal with. Like it was presented to you, like, here's something that you've known about that you've been keeping an eye on, but you haven't dealt with. And now you maybe have the mental capacity, the clarity to be able to
Yep.
health in a healthy way, deal with
Yep.
this
Absolutely.
memory, these
Yeah.
these issues that have happened over the years.
I would say 2
And you were
years
quite
ago,
young, right? Like you were quite young when all this
I was
happened.
like 4 or 5. Though that's just the age I think I remember from. But yeah, just I really feel like I just said there a minute ago. 2 years ago, I don't think if this information had been given to me, I would have been able to digest it even a little bit. I would have been very overwhelmed by it. I was already overwhelmed by it to begin with, just because it was a lot of information in one, in a couple of day span that I had sought this information out. Like nobody volunteered it to me. I sought it out and very, very much appreciated what was shared, because it's not easy for those people that, have gone
To
through
be
the
honest
things.
about it. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just like you said, you go through these things, and then once you've made enough space, you make this. Sometimes the bigger things have to stay at the bottom until there's enough little things gone that could be something that you sit with.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
in nature.
And that's a protection,
Oh,
like
God, yeah.
it's your body and your mind protecting you, because it's doing its best to make sure that you aren't, in like this crazy state of fight or flight. Like it doesn't, your body and mind at its core doesn't really want this, but it does it because it's a protective mechanism. And that's what it did for you for a long time. You had other stuff, ongoing things that you were dealing with. And this was something that you knew about, but weren't
No, was
able
not
to deal
there.
with it at the time.
Definitely not. Again, I do find it very fascinating how everything has come to where it's come.
Mm-hmm.
Like the evolution of this journey, and starting from really having no idea how to even proceed besides doing therapy, which I was doing, and taking, different courses, doing things just to broaden myself and become more enlightened, if you will.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how, the universe is like, I will only give you as much as you can take right now. As long as you're, taking the cues from the universe and following what is sort of laid out in front of you, it's a pretty incredible experience to be able to have these things, and having that closure was a big
I would imagine that
great step.
for sure, because this is something that, so you had this memories and like putting it, like you said, putting it on the shelf, keeping an eye on it, and then having all that resurface. Like you're going to go through this like roller coaster of emotion. Because you're acknowledging that this happened. Then you're unfortunately reliving some of those circumstances, I'm sure, in your mind. And that's such a difficult thing to deal with, like, reliving that to
Yeah.
some degree.
I think because I was so young, and I do believe that my mind protected me so beautifully. And this is going to sound even wilder. Part of me, because my life was so chaotic, just even outside of this incident, that chaos kept this really awful chaos at a level that it didn't affect me. It just sort of trumped it. And if that makes sense, like, I know that sounds crazy, but it's almost like it that chaos protected me from this really, really horrific situation.
Yeah.
So just going through that, and weirdly enough, being appreciative for some of that, just, I mean, on the other side of things now, it's really strange. I can't even, it's so hard to describe, because
Well,
I
I
mean,
understand like what you're getting at, because you had so much going on growing up, and you had ongoing things, like, like you've talked about in other episodes, you had ongoing things that were taking place growing up that you had to manage, that you didn't have the like bandwidth to deal with this other stuff. And unfortunately, you were like a casualty in the mix of this other horrific circumstance. And you didn't even like acknowledge it at the time, until, like you said, like just very recently, that you were able to connect the dots. And shout out to you for like your bravery of even going and figuring this stuff out, because it would be, I don't know if I was presented with the same thing, if I'd be comfortable enough to find the answers, like the validation of, did I actually think, did I make this up, or did this actually happen?
yep.
And you chose to like take that problem head on. Doesn't matter when you do it, doesn't matter if you were younger
No,
or you're older, like you're still doing it.
no, exactly. And I also too, I want to add, like, to anybody who has these experience, if this is something you're experiencing, and if it's something that you don't want to acknowledge, don't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Don't acknowledge it until you really are able to sit with it. I mean, obviously at some point you should, because it's not good to keep things of this nature locked away. But to each their own, and everybody has to do things in their own right way. And
Yeah.
there is no real right way to do these things, or
Yeah, there's
to
no manual
acknowledge
for
these
it,
things. Like, there just
for
isn't.
sure.
This was my chosen path to deal with it, because I needed to have that closure, mainly because of the amount of times in my life I have been told, you're too sensitive.
Right.
You're
You don't really know what's going on. Like, you don't know what this
exactly.
is.
Oh, you're so dramatic. Oh, you always like, you're always turning things around and twisting them. And so when you have been, that's been your foundation to not really ever trust what you remember or trust what you've seen.
Yeah.
It makes it even harder to acknowledge those things, because well, I guess maybe I did make that up.
Yeah.
But again, when it comes to something that is so distinct, and that was the thing about this memory, it was so fucking distinct,
Right.
that I was like, there's no way that this wasn't, there's no way this isn't real. And then, like I said, just doing enough of, digging around, and enough confirming that I was comfortable with being like, okay, here you are. I've acknowledged you. Thank you for, making
Yeah.
me feel not like a lunatic, I guess, is sort of the,
Yeah. Well, in the last episode, we talked about like questioning your own sanity. And this is very much to that point
it
of
is
like,
very
when
much.
you're presented with like crazy scenarios, and that like something's not right here, you're questioning things, and then you're told that no, what you think is wrong, or you're just a child, you don't understand what's going on, like
Yep.
whatever. Of course you're going to question things. And then, you have these like memories pop up, and you're like, am I still questioning my sanity? And you did for a long time. And then,
Yep.
luckily you were able to, you've made connections with people that are, that you feel safe with talking. to about as well. And you're able to be with like hopefully a strength together, which is lovely.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, you would of course like question your sanity through all of this. It is a crazy scenario.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's I know that you've also mentioned, in other episodes about how like you have that like hangover from
Yes, I did.
like, and because I've
Emotional
talked
hangover.
to you like we talk every day basically. So
Yeah.
and I definitely like watching you go through it. At first it was just like, holy shit, guess what? And then it was like fucking mad. And then, you're processing it and you're really sad. And then it's like that it's kind of like if anyone's ever had, like we have, like really bad anxiety attacks, and you go through that, and sometimes it's a few minutes, sometimes it's a lot longer, and then you feel like you're so like drained and like hungover, and your mind is just like mush, and your body is just like you have no energy.
It's like you had the flu.
Yeah, like you kind of like go through that, and I feel like I've saw you go through that over the last week, like as well. And
yeah, I definitely did.
You're more calm talking about it today.
Absolutely. It's hard for me to take time for myself without guilt. I mean, not that I don't take time to myself because I know I have to, but I do put a lot of guilt on myself about, like the dishes are piling up, the laundry needs to be done. I got to sit and read with Maddie. I got to do this with Evie. Dinner needs to be made. I don't want Dustin to come home and the house is a complete fucking disarray.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had to say, no, you need this. This is a big revelation in life. I intend to do really, really positive things with it. Mm-hmm. But right now, it just needs to be digested. Mm-hmm. You ate a rock. You gotta.
It's like a brick, like a cinder block.
Yeah, like you ate a cinder block of emotion. So let's just sit and, let this get processed.
Yeah.
So I did. And I definitely feel different, which is really interesting to me. I feel very different. It's like the more I start letting go of these childhood things, the more I look at myself as an adult. Where for years and years, I really couldn't get past the age of 16 mentally. Mm-hmm. I kind of just hovered there. So I really feel myself coming into being an adult and just, taking this shit by the balls, and it no longer holds its power. It no longer holds its, obviously there will be times where things will come and go. And I mean, that's normal for that to happen, but it doesn't hold its power anymore. It doesn't hold the power. Again, 2 years ago, this had come up. I probably would have been in the hospital.
Right.
With a horrific anxiety attack. Mm-hmm. Because it did try to manifest itself physically in I would say in the first 24 hours of, being unveiled. And I was able to, nope, this is just what this is, identify it, and just take as much time as I needed and rested through it. And I did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good because of course, when you have children, like you feel like nothing's ever good enough, really, right? No. Like we're always feel like we're disappointing ourselves and our family, right? Like I got just mom guilt, but you're a better parent and you're a better mom by being able to just deal with the situation and then being more present after. Like you're able, as opposed to kind of half-assing it, because I know I've made that mistake a lot, and I did for quite a few years, where I was always undercutting my own self, and not taking care of myself. And then that bit me in the ass, hit me like a fucking Mack truck.
Yep.
And so I've learned that lesson. And so you taking that time is so important for your mental clarity, for your strength, for giving yourself some love, because especially with something traumatic, you need to give that love back to yourself because you are a
Absolutely.
survivor, and you
Yep.
need to celebrate this as a win for yourself, that you're able to deal with this, and that you've moved through those emotions easier than you have in previous, you would have previous years ago, right? Like
Yeah.
that's very important.
I came up with an analogy yesterday. Somebody asked me, they were like, do you find it harder or do you find it easier after you talk about this stuff? Almost like asking pretty much like, is it really worth delving into? And the way I look at it is things like this are deep infected wounds. And if we don't address them, those are the things that will kill us.
Mm-hmm.
Scars are ugly, but scars are a symbol of a battle won.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, scars will ache and be uncomfortable from time to time, but they're not going to bust back open, whereas gaping wounds will.
Yeah.
So
this is true. That is a good analogy, and that's good advice. I think that's something that I have struggled immensely with, is fully I guess acknowledging the things, and really like sitting in the uncomfortable. Like I feel like I have done that. And I feel like I have done that with some areas and some scenarios, and then others I feel like I'm not there yet. And I question, like, do I even want to go there? And because of course it's uncomfortable, and you are like reliving those moments again. And I mean, it is really, really difficult. And I had like a scenario a couple of years ago where it really opened up a lot. And I'm talking about like with the estate, with my grandmother, and having to deal with really toxic individuals. And that was such a traumatic experience that lasted several years, that feel like I have the last couple of years, then I've had some health issues. I feel like I've just like, you get a little bit of momentum, and then you feel like, okay, yeah, I can start to take on things again. I can start, and I feel like I'm just starting to get there. Because that happened like only a few years ago, and then the health stuff's been pretty consistent for the last year. But I'm feeling like I'm getting to a spot where I can start to revisit some of those things I know I need to address. And it's not about reliving it. I'm saying relive, but like it's not like you're talking about sitting in the uncomfortable. And that's a better way to put it, because I'm not trying to like, I do have a problem of like trying to understand it, and you do have to remind yourself that this isn't something that like you can understand.
Well, sometimes you just
people who are,
you can't.
People are themselves, and they've made their decisions, and like you aren't them, and you will probably never ever fully understand, and most people wouldn't. And that's okay. Right. And I'm sure you went through that with this memory, with other things that you're looking back being like, how did people not get involved? How did people, you're trying to rationalize things, and
Absolutely.
that's a part of it, and it's a difficult thing, but you have to just accept that, unfortunately this is what's transpired. And
exactly. It is a big acceptance. A big, what do you call that? My brain is mushy. Just having, sometimes there isn't justice. And I fucking hate saying that.
Yeah, it sucks.
But sometimes the justice to me is just being able to acknowledge that it happened and I got through it.
Yeah.
I survived it. It sucks that the people that did this stuff can't pay for their own awful behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have to live like that. Like I don't have to take that on, that they will never see. I believe wherever we come from, whyever we're here, whatever it is, what goes around comes around. Whether you get it here, whether you get it, it'll come back.
Yeah.
Like maybe.
And that's sort of that like point of, a level of forgiveness or peace. I like to say that more than like forgiveness, because it's not that you are forgiving the individual for their acts. but you are making peace with your situation.
Exactly.
And there's a big difference with that. And you are like, you can find forgiveness and elements, through your healing journey or whatever. I do feel there is scenarios that's warranted. And I think that there's, really, I think the main hope is that you can find peace with the situation, and that like those people who have done those wrongdoings, you don't want them to like, have like receive some terrible scenario, I mean, maybe sometimes, but
well, no, but I mean, if
justice.
If they came back as a garbage truck, I wouldn't be upset. So
yeah, but like karma's a bitch, right? There's a reason for that saying. And
so
you kind of hope that karma's gonna just take care of it, and it's not your responsibility to make sure it's taken care of, I guess is my point.
Unfortunately, there are situations where that could just never, you don't have that control. There just is no way of that ever being possible. So again, finding that grace and that, because I'm not a big forgiveness person, and I know I've said this to you a few times. I feel like forgiveness is one of those things that's just been so thrown around, and it's almost like it's a sugarcoating fucking cop out as far as I'm concerned. It's just kind of like throwing this, forgive, just the whole context of what forgiveness means in the sense of forgiveness. I look at things like I have grace towards things. I can look at certain people and see, okay, you came from this background. It doesn't justify your behavior, but it gives some insight into where it possibly came from.
Yeah. Exactly.
So just having that grace to understand that humans are humans, and as wonderful as we can also be incredibly fucking toxic and awful. So
yeah,
but also seeing that I would say a good majority of people that have done really awful things, and not all of them, but there is a good majority that have also gone through awful things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, make better choices, obviously.
Yeah, be accountable, exactly. Of course.
Make better choices, but some people just don't have that capacity.
Yeah.
So that's just sort of, that's my take on that. I mean,
no, I think it's a good one. I like using grace instead of forgiveness too. I think that's a good word to use. Forgiveness is very, is a little bit black and white.
Well, that's, I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody say things to me about, just incidents with my parents over the years, and saying to me, well, you need to forgive them because that's your parent and blah, blah, blah. And in the back of my mind, there is this raging person that's like, you need to go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Don't tell me what I need to do.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I guess maybe because it was thrown at me so much.
Yeah. And also like
things.
Forgiveness because they're your parent.
Well, like, that's what I mean. And
that
that's
doesn't
why
warrant forgiveness just because you're a parent.
Well, that's what I mean. Why instill in people to forgive somebody just because of the title they hold?
Yeah.
It's
unnecessary.
It would be, I just, those are things that that really just irk me. So that's why I developed my own sort of concept of that.
Yeah.
Because I really just got sick of hearing that. I heard that a lot, and
I bet.
I can't tell you, it just enrages me.
I don't think I've heard that I need to forgive my mother. I haven't really heard that. It's more so like, oh, that's such a shame.
Oh, I get that too.
I heard that a lot. Oh, that's such a shame. Like, oh, like you probably played an element of the, like, I've had that sort of scenario from family members. Usually. And it's like, well, apparently you don't really know the full story here, right? Like, how many times have we sat and talked about actually what transpired? And you guys were very much left in the shadows and not knowing fully what was going on here. And but I mean, that's something that like, it doesn't bother me anymore because it doesn't happen really anymore because I'm pretty like, like it got to a point where I'm just like, there's no relationship. Like, move on, like, I've made my choices. They've made theirs. is done. The discussion's over. And
Yeah.
but it took a long time to kind of get that confidence to be able to just put people in their place in a respectful way. Like I wasn't, trying to be aggressive, but it's just like, we're not going there.
Well, no, exactly. It's sort of that whole spectators, they have their own sort of perception, right? On what, and even if you were to present to them a side that they're just going to see the side that they want to see, because sometimes having to look at the darker side takes more work. And, a lot of people some people feel guilt because, maybe they saw certain things and they just didn't do anything about it. But they're also coming from a generation where it didn't matter what their parents did to them. They had to love them anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's, again, trying to be forced down the throats of our generation. And we're at a very pivotal place where it's like, no, I don't think so. Not anymore. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's not, and that's coming from us being
that's not okay with me.
We would not. Oh, exactly. And also knowing how we feel about our children and imagining those scenarios placed upon them. Why the fuck would we stay putting up with that bullshit? Why? That's not teaching them anything either, our children. Yeah. So, and it's sucking ourselves back into a place we don't want to be. So no.
Yeah, exactly.
No, thank you, sir. No, thank you.
We're good.
Yeah.
I wanted to just circle back because you said that you always felt that you were stuck at 16 years old. Mm-hmm. And we've known each other like our whole lives. So, and I always felt that you were very much like a sister to me, and you taught me a lot about like how to take care of myself. So I find that interesting that you would say that you always felt like you were stuck at 16, because you taught me so much about like how to eat. I'm just talking about, like, well, a lot of things. Like, I mean, the list would be numerous, like many, 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 many things. But you taught me like how to cook, like how to do laundry. Like you've taught me like very good life skills, which is surprising to me that you feel like you were stuck at 16, because for me, I always felt like you were a very like nurturing and mature person.
Mentally,
so I find that really interesting.
I don't understand why 16 and why it stands out so prominently, but 16 just seems to be where I feel like my brain just sort of stayed. It's weird. Again, that's evolved in the last couple of years. It's definitely, I like we talked episodes back about coming into emotional maturity. I think that's a big part of it. So I think maybe like I just felt emotionally like that was where the maturity levels was kind of stuck at, was 16. Just I don't know. I don't even remember what kind of emotional maturity I had at 16. Probably not very fucking good, that's for sure. But
I mean, if we think about what we were doing at 16, I don't know.
Definitely
we were taking care of ourselves. So I mean, I guess to some degree we were mature, but yeah, I find that interesting that you say,
I never really thought too much about it. That was just the number 16. That kind of stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Back when I could wear a bikini and feel like a superstar.
And what's also funny is that neither of us drove, right? Like we got our license when we were like, I was 20, I think.
Yeah, we just had to
funny. Like a lot of people at 16, it's like, oh, I got my independence at 16 because I got my driver's license. So, right?
I know.
I think that's how the age that people are still getting their driver's license. But that's kind of like that moment of like, your sweet 16. You like have your I remember my sweet 16 being fucking terrible. But
I feel like mine might have been too. Actually, it's funny. I don't remember it at all.
Mine
to be
was
honest.
Bad. Mine was very toxic.
I feel like it wasn't probably
Try to get all the crazies together in one fucking restaurant. Yeah, it was a fucking gong show.
Oh my God.
That's a story for another day.
Yes. But we definitely need to hear it.
But that was like a bit of a wake up call for me. Yeah. But well, thank you for being so candid about your story and in your bravery putting it out there and as a lesson. And I mean, I'm sure we'll hear more about how, things, you'll probably revisit this scenario, I'm sure, at some point moving forward, where you can tell us about how that's developed for you and how you're sort of managing that. But because this is all very raw and new for you. But thank you for telling everybody about it. And I think this is I think this is going to provide some value for sure for people who may be experiencing a bit of an awakening or something as specific as a memory that
I'm grateful to have the ability. I'm grateful that it is
Yeah.
the time was the time and that I was able to share it, because I do feel like it's important for people to,
Yeah,
you know,
it
if
is.
you're sitting with something you really want to get rid of, you know, trust that instinct.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up there.
Yes.
But thanks again, everybody. We will see you in the next episode.
Sounds good. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit those subscribe and share buttons. We'll see you at the next one.